The four Gospels are the foundation of the Christian faith, each offering a unique perspective on Jesus of Nazareth. Mark's Gospel is the earliest, the shortest, and the most urgent, pulling us into a whirlwind of action from the very first line. There's no birth story or lengthy introduction. Mark begins boldly, the beginning of the good news about Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God. Mark's narrative is raw and direct, inviting us to witness the drama of Jesus' life, ministry, death, and resurrection. This gospel is not a gentle biography, but a powerful proclamation meant to challenge and engage. Mark's account became the foundation for Matthew and Luke, shaping how the story of Jesus would be told. Its style is unpolished, immediate, and urgent, reflecting the conviction that something world-changing had just happened. As we read, we're not just learning history, we're stepping into a world of tension, expectation, and mystery. Mark's gospel challenges our assumptions about power, leadership, and God. The story rushes toward a dramatic climax on a Roman cross, ending abruptly and leaving us with a question: who is this man? And what will we do with the news about Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God? Mark's urgency is a call to pay attention, to respond, and to be changed. This is a gospel that demands a decision. The journey begins now. To understand Mark's gospel, we need to know its author. Early Christian tradition identifies him as John Mark, a figure who appears in Acts and the letters of Paul and Peter. Mark grew up in Jerusalem, at the heart of the early church, hearing stories from those who knew Jesus firsthand. He joined Paul and Barnabas on a missionary journey but left early, causing tension. Yet later he was restored and valued as a helper. Most importantly, Mark was closely connected to Peter. According to early sources, Mark served as Peter's interpreter, recording his memories of Jesus' words and deeds. This gives Mark's gospel the vividness and energy of eyewitness testimony. Peter's perspective shapes the narrative, making Mark a precious link to the inner circle of Jesus' disciples. Mark wasn't one of the 12, but he was deeply embedded in the early church's life and mission. His experiences, his failures, travels, and relationships shaped how he told the story of Jesus. Mark's gospel reflects the urgency and hope of a movement spreading rapidly in a turbulent world. It's a story told by someone who knew the cost and the power of following Jesus. Through Mark, we glimpse the earliest Christian convictions. His gospel is a bridge from the first witnesses to every generation that follows. Mark's story is one of restoration, faith, and bold proclamation. Mark wrote in a world of upheaval, likely between 65 and 70 AD, during a time of crisis for Jews and Christians. The Roman Empire ruled with an iron fist, and many Jews longed for a Messiah to overthrow their oppressors. Different groups responded in different ways. Pharisees focused on law, Sadducees on power, Essenes on purity, Zealots on revolt. Into this charged atmosphere, Jesus proclaimed a kingdom that defied all expectations. Mark's audience was probably Christians in Rome, facing persecution under Nero after the Great Fire. Their leaders, Peter and Paul, had been executed. The community was suffering and misunderstood. Mark's gospel offered them courage and hope, showing Jesus as misunderstood, opposed, and faithful even unto death. The path of Jesus is the path of the cross, not to earthly power but to true life. Mark's message, following Jesus, means being prepared to suffer as he did. This was a radical, countercultural call for a struggling church. Mark's context of suffering shapes every page of his gospel. The story is not just about Jesus' faithfulness, but about the faithfulness required of his followers. In Mark, the cross is both the cost and the promise of discipleship. Mark's gospel moves at breakneck speed. His favorite word is immediately. Jesus is baptized, tempted, calls disciples, and performs miracles in rapid succession. The action rarely pauses. Mark focuses on what Jesus does, not just what he says. Unlike Matthew and Luke, Mark gives us few long teachings. He lets Jesus' deeds speak for themselves. Every miracle, every confrontation is a sign that God's kingdom is breaking in. The relentless pace draws us in, making us participants in the unfolding drama. We experience the disciples' amazement and confusion as events race by. Mark wants us to feel the urgency, to be swept up in the story. Jesus' authority is revealed in action. He commands, and even demons obey. There's no hesitation. Jesus acts with power and purpose. Mark's style is a literary device, building a case for Jesus' identity through what he does. The action is the message. This is the Messiah, the Son of God. Mark's gospel is a call to respond, not just to observe. The whirlwind of events demands our attention and our decision. In Mark, faith is not passive, it's a response to the living, active Jesus. One of Mark's most intriguing features is the messianic secret. Jesus performs miracles but repeatedly tells people not to reveal his identity. Why the secrecy? Because popular expectations of the Messiah were political and military. If Jesus had openly claimed the title, people would have misunderstood and tried to make him a king on their terms. Jesus' mission was not to overthrow Rome but to defeat sin and death through suffering. His throne would be a cross, not a golden chair. The secret was necessary until his followers could grasp the true meaning of messiahship. Only after Peter's confession does Jesus begin to teach openly about his coming suffering and resurrection. The secret is gradually unveiled, but only to those willing to follow Jesus to the cross. Mark shows us, you cannot understand Jesus without understanding the cross. The Messiah is revealed not in power but in sacrifice. The second half of Mark centers on the cross. After Peter's confession, Jesus predicts his suffering and death 3 times. The disciples struggle to accept this. They dream of glory, but Jesus teaches that greatness means serving others. The Son of Man did not come to be served but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. True authority is found in humility and self-sacrifice. On the cross, Jesus' identity is fully revealed, not by a disciple but by a Roman centurion. Truly, this man was the Son of God. God's power is shown not in victory but in suffering love. For Mark's audience, this was a message of hope. Their suffering was not defeat but participation in Jesus' story. The cross is not the end. Jesus also predicts his resurrection. Mark's gospel redefines kingship and victory. The path to life is through the cross. This is the heart of Mark's message. Mark's gospel ends abruptly, at the empty tomb with the women fleeing in fear and silence. There are no resurrection appearances in the earliest manuscripts. The story feels unfinished, and that's the point. Mark's ending is a deliberate challenge. What happens next? The women's silence creates a vacuum. The responsibility to share the good news now falls to the reader. Mark breaks the fourth wall, asking us, will you carry the message forward? The resurrection is not just a past event, it demands a response here and now. Mark's open-ended story invites us to write the next chapter with our lives. Will we believe the good news? Will we have the courage to share it? The silence at the tomb is an invitation. Mark's gospel is not just a story to be read, but a mission to be lived. The unfinished ending demands our answer. The question is not what happened then, but what will we do now? The story continues, with us. Each gospel is unique, but Mark's is the most raw and immediate. His Greek is simple, his style direct, more like a story told than a polished literary work. Mark's Jesus is deeply human. He feels compassion, anger, sorrow, even frustration. This makes Jesus relatable, fully divine yet fully immersed in human experience. Mark's portrayal of the disciples is also striking. They are confused, fearful, and often fail to understand Jesus. In the end, they all desert him, and Peter denies him 3 times. This honesty would have comforted Mark's struggling community. Even the closest followers failed, yet were restored. Mark's gospel is a story of grace. Jesus chooses flawed people to carry out his mission. The focus is not on the disciples' strength, but on Jesus' faithfulness. Mark offers realistic hope. Our failures do not disqualify us. The gospel is for ordinary people called to follow an extraordinary Lord. Mark's story is one of hope, grace, and relentless invitation. Though the shortest, Mark's gospel has shaped Christian history profoundly. It provided the framework for Matthew and Luke, establishing the sequence of Jesus' ministry, death, and resurrection. Mark's message of a suffering Messiah has given strength to believers facing persecution and hardship. The gospel challenges any faith that becomes too comfortable or aligned with worldly power. Mark's emphasis on the kingdom of God as a present reality inspires action, justice, healing, and compassion. The miracles are signs of God's intention to mend creation, not just stories from the past. Mark's urgent narrative calls for an urgent, active faith. At its core, Mark asks, "Who do you say that I am?" He presents the evidence and leaves the verdict to us. The legacy of Mark is not doctrine, but a life-changing encounter. The question remains, how will we respond?